Hey, sixth graders. All right, I've got another ratio lesson for you today, except this time we're going to be putting ratios into tables. Okay, so kind of like the one I have drawn here. And what they're going to do is basically have blank spaces in the tables, and your job is going to be to fill in those blanks. All right, so let's take a look at my first example here. I have in my table, we're comparing triangles to sides. Right, sides of a triangle. Remember, ratios compare two things. So if I have one triangle, that means I have three sides. All right, okay. Now, if I have two triangles, how many sides am I going to have? You might know that off the top of your head. You could draw some pictures, whatever you want. But the easiest way to solve ratio tables is to ask yourself, how do we go from 1 to 2? Times 2, right? 1 times 2 is 2. So what's 3 times 2? 3 times 2 is 6. So we know that 6 is going to go there, right? Now my next empty spot is over here. So I don't know what this number is, but I have the bottom one. So I could go back to the 3 and ask myself, how do I get from 3 to 9? How do I get from 3 to 9? Multiply by 3. So if I multiply by 3 here, you see that? Okay, if I multiply by 3 here, I'm going to multiply by 3 up here. So what's 1 times 3? That's 3. Okay. Now I've got my last box. This time I have the top number, so I have to go to the top and ask myself, how do I get from 1 to 4? Times 4, right? So how do I get from 3 to over here? I'm going to multiply by 4. What's 3 times 4? We know that is 12. Now my table's full. All you're really doing is seeing how we multiply using other numbers or add or whatever the problem is, and then put it in the table. Okay? All right, let's try some more. Okay, my next problem is comparing cars to trucks. So for every 2 cars, we're going to have 5 trucks. So let's think about that pattern. Okay? I need to figure out which 2 is going to come next. Okay, I have the 10 down here, so I can use this as my basis. How do I go from 5 to 10? Times 2, right? So we know this one's times 2, so the top one is also going to be times 2. 2 times 2 is 4. 2, 4, 6, 8. That makes sense, doesn't it? Let's look at the bottom. Now, how am I going to get these 2? Let's look at the top because they're filled in. How do I go from 2 to 6? 2 times 3. So I'm going to times by 3. Times by 3 on the bottom. What's 5 times 3? 15. And again, I have the 8. How do I go from 2 to 8? Times 4. So what's 5 times 4? 5 times 4 is 20. And then my table's full. 5, 10, 15, 20. The table makes sense. All these ratios are going to be equivalent. Okay, that's another way to think about it. Now, also, some of the problems are going to ask you to fill out the table and then write the equivalent ratios. So what are my equivalent ratios? I have 2 to 5, 4 to 10, 6 to 15, and then 8 to 20. All 4 of these, oh, if you can see, I've got colons in between all of those, okay? All 4 of these are going to be equivalent ratios. This problem here, we're going to be comparing dollars to cents, okay? So if I have $1, how many cents? That's going to be 100 cents. So we've got a couple empty spaces, so we use the ones that are filled in to help us find those, all right? So I have this one filled in. How do I go from 100? That's kind of hard to write arrows. There we go. How do I go from 100 to 300? Times by 3, that's easy. So what do I have to do on the top? Times by 3. 1 times 3 is 3. How do I go from 100 to 900? Multiply by 9, right? So I have to do 1 times 9. 1 times 9 is 9. So that one's filled in. Now I've got the opposite. I've got an 8 over here. How do I go from 1 to 8? Times by 8. So I have to do 100 times 8. 100 times 8 is going to be 800. This one, it looked like we were going to have a pattern, right? But then we didn't, and that's okay because these are all still equivalent ratios. So if I'm going to write these out, I'm going to write 1 to 100, 3 to 300, 9 to 900, and then the last one would be 8 to 800. Writing those out just like that, those are my equivalent ratios, and here's the table, okay? All right, the next one we're looking at is comparing petals to flowers. Okay, so my first one says that if I have 24 petals, I'm looking at 2 flowers. So 24 to 2 is my ratio here. Now, this one, we've kind of got a few different numbers again that we're going to have to fill in. So let's take a look at the first empty spot, okay? Okay, so we're going to look at the first empty spot that we have, and we're going to use what we know. How do we go from 24 to 12? Well, 12 is smaller, but how could we get from 24 to 12? Divide by 2, right? So if I'm here at 2, how could I go from 2 to here? We just divide by 2 also. What's 2 divided by 2? 1, right? And that makes sense. 2 petals is 24 flowers. 1 petal is going to be 12 flowers. Okay? Now we're trying to fill in this box right here. I have to ask myself, how can I go from 2 to 4? How do I get from 2 to 4? Times 2. So what's 24 times 2? 48. So 48 is going to go in this box. Okay, we're doing a few different things, but they're all still going to end up being equivalent. Okay, now let's look at this last one down here. How do I get from 24 to 36? Oh boy, I don't know off the top of my head, right? I'm not sure. I don't know how we could do that. So let's look at what some of our other options are, because these are all equivalent, right? How do I go from 12 to 36? Would that work out? What about 28 to 36? I can't think of anything here, but I know that 12 times 3 is 36. So if I take 12 times 3 to get 36, I can take the number directly under the 12, not the 2. I have to go with the one that matches the 12. And I would take 1 times 3. 1 times 3 is 3. And that's how I would fill it in. So some tables you're going to you're going to have to work around a little bit and see. So some tables you're going to have to look around and kind of see how you can piece things together and what information they already give to you.